I don't know who decided on the jacket, but like that's
You like the jacket?
perfect.
That was all me.
Was it? Terrific. I need a jacket like that. It's like, oh, how did they know? All right, so I grew up in a religious family. My dad was a pastor, so I'm a PK. We were steeped in the church and its traditions, and we loved the church as a family and looked to ways to be engaged. So when I went off to college, I wasn't real sure what my vocation was going to be. I had a lot of interests. Finally, it landed on seminary and thinking that God was really calling me to this, use my gifts. I had very particular gifts for this work, to be a pastor in a congregation. And so I went to seminary, and in seminary I got interested in sort of the academic side of things too. So I had in mind maybe I would pursue that at some point, but I went into the parish ministry and really thrived. I loved, as I have said, I like bringing the gospel to bear on people's lives, to the word of grace and truth, to free them and help them, and understand that when you help individuals, you help communities and you change the world that way. So I was enjoying being a pastor, but also got a little burned out and interested in pursuing academic career. And theology didn't seem the way to go because I was very practically oriented. I wanted to give tools to people to change their lives. So psychology became a way for that to happen, and I was very interested in faith development, faith formation, and youth. My wife is also a pastor, and she got called to a parish in Atlanta, and so I followed her, and I ended up going to school, in graduate school, in psychology, interested in moral development of children. So again, the idea is how to bring the gospel to bear on people's lives, but it doesn't always have to be through the church, or the church can use the tools of psychology to better enhance and bring life to the people in the church and the world. And so that became an interest. I actually got to graduate school after writing a curriculum at a local congregation and thinking, I don't know how children learn best. And so I went into an educational psychology PhD program and then moved on toward a generalized moral development of children. So that's how I came into academics and expertise in educational psychology. And I've, through the rest of my career, done both. I've been a parish pastor, mostly in interim situations, although I did serve a black church in Atlanta for about 8 years. And then since getting my PhD, I've taught and worked in Lutheran social services, so the social service side of the church, and then gotten grants in that setting to do kind of what I call practical research. Yeah, well, one way that my training in psychology has helped me to understand how children can learn the faith and make the faith their own is to kind of honor the gifts of the children. Not so much that we teach them, but we engage them in opportunities to bring forward their ideas and their gifts and let them in that way own their faith. So like one example is I made a character curriculum that teach character virtues to children using film clips from Hollywood films. But it isn't so much that they see the example of the character trait, but that the film clip actually showed a kind of dilemma. One example is honesty, is the film Liar, Liar. And so he told his child, I have to lie. It's part of my job to lie. Well, when is it okay to tell a little white lie in a social situation? So have the child deal with a dilemma. And you could use the same principle toward faith. When is it right to forgive? How does forgiveness work? Give them the dilemma and let them struggle and talk. This especially works well with teenagers even as young as 8th grade, 7th grade, to engage their ideas and engage them in the thought. And the other example I would give about what I've learned in psychology that would help in youth faith development is the principles of positive psychology, that you help youth develop their gifts, discover their gifts. This is very natural in the Christian church, the spiritual gifts. What are your gifts? But to think broadly then in terms of vocation as well, like what is God uniquely calling you to do and share your gifts to change the world and make the world better. So positive psychology and positive youth development has a lot to say about the positive contributions that youth can make, and also gives lots of tools on how to help youth discover their positive qualities and give them purpose. Well, what excites me now at this stage of my career are about the kind of blending or partnership between psychology and religion is using the insights to make faith come more alive and to help people see needs and serve in the world. One of the things I've been working on personally is a book about there are 9 principles that the best youth service organizations in the country use to serve youth. These principles could be used for youth groups and youth faith formation. Some of the principles are creating a community, a sense of community and belonging. Another principle is these successful youth organizations help youth find their purpose, as I was talking about before. Another thing these organizations do is give youth opportunity to give to the world in service. And actually, youth groups kind of naturally do this. In some ways, I took what I knew from youth groups and their success and said, well, are these secular organizations doing anything like it? And yes, they are. And so there's a natural synergy between the way youth groups, out of school programs work, and they could learn from each other. So that's one exciting piece. The other exciting piece that I would like to continue to work on and move more toward is understanding how to translate insights from psychology, and for that matter, insights from Christianity, into culturally specific contexts, and to honor the cultural context and let there be an expression in those cultural contexts that can also inform other cultures. So I'm interested in how that's done and how relationship building is a key to that. And that's been a lot of our discussion at this conference in desiring to translate or bring psychological insights to the church and also let the church inform our work in psychology. Well, my interest in youth, I think, just comes more naturally. I had what I would call a fairly idyllic youth experience. The church was part of my life. I had deep friendships which continue to this day. I saw, in some ways, a privileged development, but I think my interest in youth comes from understanding how critical that period is to building a life of service, a life of abundance, a life of joy, all the good things that we want for both individual humans and the world. So catching, humans at that stage of development and focusing is, in some ways, gives you the most impact in terms of interventions and help. So I think my interest in youth really stems from that understanding that it's a critical period. And it is also a critical period in my life where I developed my sense of vocation, my own sense of calling, my own understanding of my identity and self and who I belong to and who belongs to me. And all of that is so important as you move forward. You really carry that then forward in the rest of your life, and you're just sort of riffing on the things you started to question and solve at that period throughout your life.
Is there anything else you want to share as we wrap up?
I think we can often separate things just because we have these categories like church and psychology, and I think there's real wisdom in thinking that it's all of a whole. It's not really that separated. And so the insights, like I was saying, that we can learn from how really good secular youth organizations function, especially with youth on the outside, on the margins, whom Jesus calls us to serve. So they're doing a really good job of that. Well, what insights can we learn about that from them in the church? And then what insights, they already kind of practice what the church does in terms of building a community of values and belonging, and to sort of claim those as the church and say, yeah, we have some things to inform the world about in terms of how best to serve youth. So it's really not that divided in my mind, and I think we do better when we think it's all one whole.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Good.